the men.
Good afternoon, folks. We are here on Tuesday, March 11th in General and Housing. It's about 1:40 p.m. and we are going to be hearing from Rep. Krasnow on a short form bill that is similar to what we've already heard this session. And it is Bill 461. So whenever you're ready, take it away.
Long journey.
Hope you traveled safely.
Hello,
Hello.
good afternoon. For the record, Representative Emily Krasnow, Chittenden 9, South Burlington. And I am here to talk about short form bill H 461. And this bill amends various sections of Title 21 of the Vermont statutes to expand employee access to unpaid leave, ensuring that all workers, particularly those in non-traditional family structures, LGBT plus families, have equitable access to to unpaid family and caregiving leave. These changes focus on broadening the scope of leave, creating new categories, enhancing protections for employees taking leave for reasons such as domestic violence, sexual assault, and stalking, and for bereavement time. So the bill unpaid leave policies would be more inclusive and equitable standards, providing the equal leave opportunities for all. This would expand the definition of family member to include LGBTQ plus family language, and updates the definitions of bereavement leave, domestic partner, and other terms related to family and caregiving. It also introduces provisions for safe leave for employees experiencing domestic violence, sexual assault, or stalking. And the bill would enhance Vermont's leave laws by providing broader, more inclusive, and equitable leave options. And basically, so it's very similar to the bill that we heard from Rep. Hedrick, but there will be some changes. So in this version, we will not be having a reporting mechanism. Basically, the issues that I felt with that were that it kind of could be productive for an employee to then have to ask their employees about their orientation or other things. So this kind of leaves that part out. And then it also lines up the bereavement and domestic violence provisions to be equal with the other forms of leave. And of course, the most important piece to this bill that I believe is really modernizing it to language that reflects all family structure as well. And so that's kind of where we're at. It, as people say in this building, it's a simple bill, but I look forward to discussing some of the changes, and I think this could be a more palatable bill to get across the finish line this session. So I can take any questions from people, and yes, Gail.
Would it be policy of the employer as far as these are sensitive issues? Do they have to report those sensitive issues to be able to qualify for the unpaid leave?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Vice Chair Bartley.
I might be in a decent place to answer that. If you,
I would love to defer to you, yeah.
yeah. So what this bill does is so you have the federal leave, and then we have Vermont family and medical leave. And so there is certain paperwork that has to be completed by an individual who's either they themselves experiencing some sort of medical incident. The state would probably have to make changes to said documents for the safe leave because that's not included in the document now. But there are very specific questions that are asked of the employee. And if it's, it could be a partner or a spouse who maybe they have somebody in their family who's going out for surgery, or so there's two different documents. Either you do it for yourself or for somebody in your family. But very specific questions are asked, and you as the employee need to complete that. And there's also a piece for the physician overseeing whatever the leave might be. So I could foresee there being some changes to that documentation. A lot of times, employers in the state of Vermont will use the federal paperwork. So that might just be a change in paperwork.
Yeah, and when Sophie does a walkthrough, in section 3, it talks about notice and documentation. And so that kind of gets into that, but that's a great question. Are there any other questions? Yes,
It's not a question. I just want
we'll
to,
wrap up.
yeah.
Okay.
Or I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh, I'm good.
For working on this.
Yeah.
Again, I have a very specific interest in this because I work in human resources. And one of the questions I get often from different employers is how to handle bereavement leave. And sometimes it's awful. It's like, well, an uncle died.
Oh,
And
no.
how are we supposed to mandate or create a policy that's equitable for everybody for their loss and their grief? I think the work that you did was great. And so we'll have Sophie in here to do a walkthrough. I cannot remember when that is, but tomorrow. Perfect. So that's when we'll start. And then we are going to
Thank you.
transition. Thank you so much. To our committee bill on housing. And Cameron Wood is going to walk, please do, he's going to walk through the entire bill with us or just parts, starting from the beginning, right?
That is, however you would like me to proceed.
Let's start from the beginning, or if there's anything that is changed,
Yes.
do we want to go over the changes first?
It's up to you. I'm happy to just kind of walk through. I can mention each section, mention if things have changed, if things haven't changed.
I think that would be. Please and thank you.
Well, give me a moment.
Bless you. Thank you. Oh.
I'm glad your first name starts with a C, Ken.
Skill.
I am as well. Golly, if you will let me in. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome back. I hope everybody had a wonderful week last week. For the record, Cameron Wood, Office of Legislative Counsel. I am going to be sharing our most recent version of your committee bill. Let's see if this works. Okay. Are we zoomed in enough?
Mhm.
That work for everybody? Okay. All right, so we're talking about your committee bill. So as you recall, we're on draft request 250838. We don't have a bill number yet, but we are up to draft 7.2. If you all recall, the last draft that we walked through was draft 6.1, and we walked through that Friday afternoon right before the town meeting break. So there have been some changes, and I'll just walk through the bill top to bottom and kind of highlight, what hasn't changed and what has changed. It is available on the website. You all have a copy, and the yellow language is what has changed since the last time we met. For starters, as you will see on page 1, we've actually added some subjects and statement of purpose and a title. If you all recall, those were blank in your last versions because we wanted to wait till we were near the finish line or near completion of the bill before we added all of that information. I'm not going to read it to you. This is just, it's for those that are new, this is, information that our office uses and inserts into bills to give, a nonpartisan, accurate statement of the subjects and the statement of purpose and the title of the bill. So moving on, I will comment for the record and for the committee that draft 7.1 was edited. However, we've made some slight tweaks to it. So that's why you still have the draft watermark. It will need to be kind of edited one last time if the committee, when we get to a point that you're ready to move forward. So moving forward, top of page 2, we're in the VHIP program. And our first change is going to be on page 6. I'm not going to walk through line by line. We'll just kind of comment. The changes here. We have the restructuring of the funding that goes out. We have the changes associated with the 10-year program where we're moving away from requirement that the landlord lease to these subsets of populations, and that instead the landlord can rent the unit for fair market rent. There was conversation previously and concern about moving away from those requirements, and I believe that the department came in here and spoke to you all about having some sort of set aside for the 5-year program. So that's going to be the first change that we come to on page 6, line 3. We're creating a new subsection G. We actually walked through this language on Friday before you left. It was kind of part of a subdivision of F, if you all remember. And I talked to you that I drafted it real quick and I may pull it out and make it a subsection G. So that's why that's changed. So it's not in subsection F anymore. It's a new subsection G. And so we have minimum funding for the 5-year forgivable loans. And so the language in this sub 1 here isn't changed except for the last sentence. The department annually has to establish a minimum amount of funding that they receive, which will be set aside for these 5-year grants and forgivable loans. And again, the 5 years have to be leased out to individuals exiting homelessness, refugees, etc. So the set aside shall be a minimum of 30% of funds dispersed annually. That is highlighted simply because I took it from another subsection and I added it up here to the top, but that was in your draft 6.1 that we walked through Friday before last.
Okay. Just help me remember when we discussed that draft. It wasn't clear what, at least not to me, whether the department was suggesting that 30% was the beginning point for them to then adjust annually. The way this reads is a minimum of 30% every year going forward. So
Right.
do we have a chance to check with them what it was that they had intended in that language?
So I spoke with the department. I will tell you what they told me, but if you want to hear from them, I would, recommend that you bring them in and talk to you directly. They told me that their intention was for it to be 30% for the first year, and then for them to be able to set it either above or below that number in years subsequent to that.
Okay, which is what I understood. So
This is drafted in the way that I was asked to draft it. And my understanding is there are concerns from some of your colleagues and other committees about making sure there is a set amount going to the 5-year program on an annual basis. Now, you all as a committee can change that. This is your bill. So we can strike that and make it to where we can add it into a session law that just says for FY26, 30% of the fund shall be set aside for the 5-year grants, and then leave it as annually. The department will set it after that.
okay, so did we make that decision as a committee? To opt for this language as opposed to what it was that they were suggesting?
So I think we should probably wait for Chair Mahali
Okay.
to have that conversation. He spent some time upstairs this afternoon That's why he's not currently here talking about this specifically, is my understanding. So I think we should probably wait till we hear how that conversation goes.
Let's bring up, I had thought in our 5 and 10 year, our goal was to have grants and forgivable loans for both. Or are we just trying to add the forgivable loan part to 5 year?
Do with the taxes.
Where the,
Tax liability on the grant.
right,
It just says, I think that we did both. It is both. I think they can convert it to a forgivable loan.
no, you can do a 10 year, I think we want to just offer, you can do either, you can do it, there is a conversion part. You can
Right.
Convert one from a 5 to a.
The way I would read this currently is you can get a grant.
5 year. Grants.
Let me think about it. Let me think about it and
Grants.
review the language a little more. It's not, so this is here, grants and 5-year forgivable loans. To me, I don't read that to say that a grant is only eligible for 5 years. I think this is saying that if you're getting a grant, which could be 5 years, could be 10 years, you have to comply with these requirements.
I'm just picking it up later in this page 6 we were reading. It says the remaining funds can be used for either 5-year grants or forgivable loans or 10-year forgivable loans. I just want to make sure we had parity.
It could be a strike, so it would be grants or,
I
thought
just
it was-
want to make sure that we're doing both.
Yes.
throughout The whole thing.
I thought.
Yeah.
I thought
Yeah, that's 2 pages.
page 2.
I thought we were only applying the leftovers from the 5 year to the 10 year.
that's in a subsection we're gonna get to in
Oh,
a second. This is saying in sub 1, it's saying you have to set aside a certain amount annually. And then whatever's not set aside can be used for anything. And so, the way that reads is 5-year grants or forgivable loans. So it would be limiting the grant to 5 years, which I think is, Rep Parsons, what you're trying to get at.
Yeah.
So what we're reading, right, is this language here, the 5-year is limiting the grant in this section. And so we'd want to say grants or forgivable loans is probably how I would just phrase it and remove the 5-year.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think this page is just dealing with the set aside and what happens if it's not totally, what the criteria are for 5 and 10 years, a couple pages below.
So what I would propose here is, again, striking the 5-year, if that's what the committee would like, so we're not limiting the grants to 5 years, and then removing or forgivable loans, so it would say remaining funds. So again, this is the section where we're saying a minimum allocation has to go to the 5-year grants or forgivable loans. Remaining funds, so if it's minimum of 30, and let's say the department never moves it from 30, they're just gonna leave it at 30 every year, then 70% of the funds can be eligible for X. And X is gonna be grants, because we'll strike this 5-year on line 7. So they would be eligible for grants or 10-year forgivable loans. So the other 2 ways that the monies can go out under the program. I believe that would be getting to what you're.
If that's how it would be worded, it sounds weird to me, but if that gets to all 4 possibilities, then that works. That's all I was making sure of.
That was, I have a note on my notes from last week that says that we're going to clarify with Sean Gilpin about the 5 versus 10 year, because it says the quote, any funding from the set aside not used within 1 year shall be available for 10 year, unquote.
So I'm gonna jump to subdivision 4, because that is what you're referring to there. So this is language that was in the last draft. It's funds from the set aside not utilized after 1 year shall become available for the 10-year forgivable loans. And the concern was how that would operate in practice. And I spoke with the administration, and again, if you have questions that you would like to direct to them, I would advise you to bring them back in so you can hear from them directly. But what they told me is that is their intention. They want to ensure that if money is not going out the door in a given year for the 5-year loans, then they don't want that money simply tied up. They
Yeah,
want
right.
it to be getting out the door, so.
But it wouldn't make sense for us to then reallocate it to the 5-year.
No, this is, the top one is just basically, it's setting what to do with everything else. So it's setting like here's the 5-year program. And everything else can be used for all 4 of them.
Yeah.
But the way it was worded, it's set aside and then they can be used for three possibilities.
I got you. I got you.
Is that a and Bethel amount? Okay.
Okay. Okay, so bring us back to sub 1. So, we do have the 30% minimum. Concern on making sure that we're not limiting the remaining of the funds, so I can make a quick edit there. Moving into the sub 2, this is mainly similar language. The department shall consult with the Agency of Human Services to evaluate factors in establishing the amount of the set aside. I'm simply pulling up what the language was. It said to. Oh, that's just a verb edit, if you will. It said evaluate factors to establish the amount, and I said change it to in establishing the amount. So here are the factors that the department has to consult with AHS on: the availability of vouchers, current need, the desire of landlords to use or to house the eligible population, support services available to landlords, and prior uptake and success rate for participating landlords. Again, those are the factors that they have to analyze in determining where to set the set aside amount. Now we're moving into sub 3. We have a slight change here from the previous version. The previous version had the department working with the Department for Children and Families. That has been changed for this version to say that the department shall coordinate with local coordinated entry lead agencies to direct referrals for those individuals to be housed pursuant to the 5-year grants. So my recollection of the reason we have this is, again, if we're going to have the set aside, then wanting to make sure the department is specifically working with entities to find individuals and families who they could then help work or help match, help refer to landlords for the 5-year grants. I was just up in House Human Services, walking through this specific section with them. They made a few minor recommendations to language here, so I'll just mention it to you all now. They would like this to say, shall coordinate with the local coordinated entry lead agencies and home ownership centers. We're in line 3. Yes, ma'am. Sub 3, line 18. So I would say, work with local coordinated entry lead agencies and home ownership centers to direct referrals for those individuals or families prioritized to be housed pursuant to the 5-year grant or forgivable loan. With some slight tweaks they would like to see to help clarify a few pieces of who the department will be working with, who's actually making the referrals, and then wanting to make sure we're identifying the prioritized individuals to be housed. Okay. Mr. Chair, I just got through walking through the BHIP language. So I'm pausing if there are other questions or if you want to interject.
So we were up in House Human Services, and Cameron was so inviting that they couldn't resist with ideas, and I think some of their ideas were pretty good, and you went through them, I take it, the few changes?
I just mentioned the 2 changes that the committee requested to this subsection here.
Right. I think the only other thing we might do, and I think we have the time to do it. There's a concern, these are not permanently affordable units. They're 5 years and 10 years. And particularly with the 5 years, since that's the program where there's a requirement that the people be homeless unless they can't find them who can afford them. they're concerned, what happens? We have data on finding out, well, what actually happens when the 5-year expires? Is the rent, what is the rent that's coming up, et cetera, just data. And Sean Gilpin pretty much said, we're up for collecting that, we'll do that. We sort of do it already. And they were thinking, gee, it would be better if there was statutory language. And I think so. What I think we're going to be doing, Cameron, is together, our heads together real quick and drafting something which would probably go, you remember the section that says that the department shall annually publish the amount of the set aside on its website. It'll say something like, the department shall report to all the committees the information and the amount of the loans or grants for the 5-year program and the 10-year program, and something like the status of the units where the 5-year term has expired and the relationship of the rent at that time to the fair market value, or something like that. It'll just be in it. And I said we draft something and I'd shoot it up to the chair. And I think we should. I think that's a perfectly legitimate concern and one that's they're more than willing to do. So they voted, I don't know how many members of the committee there are. 11? I don't know. There was 1 dissent, so everybody else is in. So that's my first drive by. We have driven by.
Nice.
Great.
We have another drive by coming up. Okay. Please go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, nothing.
So I made mention to the committee the other 2 changes that Human Services would like with this subsection 3 about adding home ownership centers and prioritizing the individuals, those individuals or families prioritized to be housed. There was a question, Mr. Chair, about the minimum 30% set aside. And I don't know if you would like to answer that or get into that now, or if you would
What's the
like
question?
moving on.
What is the question?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
The question was, my recollection of the question was, with the last draft that we walked through, 6.1 Friday before your town meeting. There was a question about whether the set aside was intended to be 30% every year, or whether the department wanted it 30% the first year.
Whatever the department originally wanted, this is the language they submitted, and it has continually appeared. And I think that I do not wish to rock the boat. I think they're okay with it.
Okay.
Let's talk practicality for a minute. In the real world, it's getting harder and harder to match homeless with these units. Think about it. Somebody's homeless. But let's say I mean, of course, it depends on the unit size. Let's say the HUD fair market rent is $1,000 a month. Let's say fair market rent would be $1,500 a month, and the HUD is $900 or $1,000. Well, as long as there's plenty of homeless who have Section 8 vouchers, no problem. They can pay. But the problem, and in fact, originally, one of the major impetuses originally for this FIA program was that people were actually losing their Section 8 vouchers because they weren't being used, because they couldn't find a unit. And so people were saying, my God, let's get them units. And that worked, and it has worked. The problem is, and it's working for non-homeless as well, it's oversubscribed. But the problem is it's increasingly difficult. Increasingly smaller a number of people with Section 8 vouchers. And given what's happening nationally, I really am fearful about what's going to happen. So it's getting a little harder. I think the reason I basically said to the committee upstairs, I think we're joined at the hip on this. I think this isn't over. I think we have to keep, because they work on the HOP program of homeless. We're the people who work on how you get out of homelessness. And I think we have to learn more about how this works and work with them and work with the data and see where this is going. under increasingly difficult circumstances. It's not a positive picture. And I think that it's quite possibly that we'll see that they can't fill the 5-year program. They can't make the 30%. And we've got to find that out, and we got to know why. We got to know it wasn't, oh, well, we really don't like this. So there's stuff that lies ahead on this. But I think this is a great start. It's just a start. So,
Yeah, I'll just point out that this language has been brought up as to, this seems different from what they said in committee. And you said, well, this is what I got in email.
this is what the language they proposed. It's the language that they seem to be okay with now.
Yeah, I'm just pointing out that I'm gonna be okay with it as well. It's not some massive thing.
Yeah.
But also the fact that what they said versus what showed up in an email, I don't know if anyone's mistyped something in an email before. But to just say, is this what you meant, as opposed to, that's what they sent, that's what we're going with, it's been in 2 drafts, it's good to go. We shouldn't question it.
Right.
I think is a little different.
I think it's not just they send an email, it's the language they proposed to us.
Not when they were in committee.
No, what happened in committee was they didn't have any minimum.
Right.
And I proposed, how about, at least for a year, I did, how about 25%? And they said, we can do you one better, we can do 30%.
Yep.
It was unclear at that point whether would it still be the 1 year that I said or what? But then they proposed actual language and it wasn't. My concern is, at this point, I think having been upstairs, I think that everybody's pretty wedded to that. And Sean seems okay with it. He hasn't voiced any objection to that.
I let the committee know. I did speak with the administration
Yeah,
last week.
okay.
Sean did mention to me their intent was for it to only be 30% for the first year.
Right.
But as far as whether he is okay with this moving forward, I don't want to speak for him in that regard.
I think that there is a possibility that they may find that they can't make it. And if they do, they'll grant waivers and they'll tell us. They report quarterly, they'll tell us, and we'll deal with it. And I don't frankly know yet how we deal with it. I think this whole issue is going to be swallowed up by what the federal government's doing.
I have what might be a silly question. So this language will be a statutory change, not a session law.
Correct.
And we'll have
Does that have an
change it
effect
in
on the
statutory
language that
language
we
if we have to
use?
change it.
Like how, like, would we have to repeal that portion?
We'd have to amend it. If it turns out, the way I see it is, if it turns out that after a year of working on this, because it's going to take a year to
Yeah.
find out, we find out that they can't fill it, we're going to have a problem that we're going to have to deal with. And it isn't just like, changing it to 25% or whatever. It's going to be a big problem, and human services is going to want to talk about it too.
Okay.
I mean it. I see this as something we are going to have to revisit.
I will say, whether you put it in session law or statute, you would have to repeal it either way.
Yeah.
But because it is a permanent expectation, it needs to be in statute. Okay. All right, we are through the VHIP program. Those are the changes that were made, so I'm going to keep moving along. Feel free to interrupt if you have questions. We're on.
You do have a question.
Yeah.
Do you want a sunset? Do you want to put, no, okay,
I
yeah, that's fine.
I don't want to sunset, but I'm not going to forget this. In other words, I told that committee upstairs, we will be working with you and we will be watching this and that's why I think I want to put in a data reporting requirement to us, to them, to the Senate.
On page 7, we are moving into the manufactured home improvement repair program. We've got no changes to this program subsequent to what you saw on Friday. Same thing with the Vermont Infrastructural Sustainability Fund. bottom of page 8, moving to the top of page 9, there are no changes to this section. So we're gonna move into the Universal Design Study Committee. Page 12. And the change that I've made was to add the commissioner of the Department of Disabilities, Aging and Independent Living. That's on lines 12 and 13. Okay. Moving along.
I just want to alert you, I have an email that I got today that I can't find from somebody saying they wanted it, from Terry Corsone.
Terry Corsons.
This would be Teresa. Is it,
He's from the courts.
I know,
She's. Not that she should be.
okay,
She should be-
saying she wanted a representative on something that was in our bill. And I couldn't tell because she was operating off of a different, like, section, like grant two.
The email that was someone else.
Yeah, so anyway, I'll run that down. I just wanted to alert you. I couldn't tell from her email whether she was talking about this committee. And I couldn't imagine why she
I don't
did it.
know. This was one I thought,
That's a few days ago, though.
right.
Yeah, here. Oh. Okay, she's clarified it. I asked her, what study are you referring to? She said the Act to Feel Appeals study referenced at page 23. I'm not inclined to mess, all we do is change the date on that appeal study, and I don't want to get into that, so I think I'm gonna tell Terry to let it lie for now. Okay.
We are going to keep moving. There are no other changes on the report itself, but I will highlight something that was flagged for me by our partners at the Joint Fiscal Office. The appropriate,
Where are you?
we are on page 15, line 15. So this is the committee we were just talking about, Universal Design Study Committee. We've appropriated $15,000 to that committee for the per diems. The appropriation needs to go somewhere. It is currently appropriated to
Yeah, and I was asked,
nowhere.
who is in charge? What entity is kind of in charge of this?
So I will take the opportunity again to flag something. The bill has our office, the Office of Legislative Counsel, as the entity providing assistance. So this is in the sub D, committee shall have the administrative, technical, and legal assistance of the Office of Legislative Counsel and Joint Fiscal Office. I'm just in an effort of being transparent with you all and discussing my limitations. If I'm staffing this committee, I may not be the best person from the legal expertise standpoint to provide services to said committee. And so it may be worth it you could add any state entity in there that may be more apt to support the work that is expected to be done. You know, I don't know if that is
So we have
actually the
two
department.
different problems here. One is the appropriation has to be to somebody and then goes through them.
Correct.
And the other is,
And please know, I will, if it is our office and, you know, we will
And then
provide services. So I'm not
is there
trying
an
to diminish
agency that
the service.
is
that we
most
provide.
concerned with this?
VHFA.
VHFA. So can VHFA receive appropriation? Yes. Well, I'll tell you what. Do you want me or you to confirm with Maura that VHFA can take the lead on that?
I'm happy to email.
Okay, all right. So it would be the appropriation to them and to add I would say that, I know you'd like to get off the hook, but I don't think we should let you off the hook. I think we should say, you always say that to people, oh, I don't have expertise. You know, you can only get away with that.
I think I'm still on like week 12.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Week 11.
I've been doing the same thing and people are beginning to say to me, don't do that. So.
Yeah, I keep wishing people a happy new year.
So I think, but we could add the administrative technical legal assistance of VHFA and. How about that?
Like, does that mean that they take the lead? No,
No,
no.
it doesn't.
Okay,
Okay. All right,
that's fine.
VHFA, check, okay?
Yes, sir. Okay. So the appropriations piece, we'll have to change that as well, just to be appropriated to them. So moving into the tax department housing data access piece, section 5. So this is page 15, moving to page 16. We have not made any changes to this section. Moving in.
Yes.
I haven't been able to get a exact answer of what an extract the database means.
Oh, that's right. We were wondering what that means.
I haven't been able to get like we want this and this information. I mean, there's a bunch of information in there.
As opposed to
I'll just give you what my concern is that it's something as, heating systems or something random that's in there, but maybe not collected by every municipality or not for every parcel. And I just don't want this to be and you have to just collect that and then give it to them. If it's there, absolutely. I just don't want the empty fields to show up and they say you have to go fill these in. Because what they collect now, every town is going to have, every town has. But if we're adding, we don't want to have that happen. So we could have a way of ensuring that if empty fields show, I don't know if they can ask. I don't know, so. I was like,
Do we need to define what data we want?
Well, that's-
Define that we're not asking for additional.
I think it's not, what if it said the extract of the current? Oh, no.
just however it's worded, so that if they say, heating systems and half the town's cards don't say what their heating system is, they don't say, well, you need to go track that down.
I'm not familiar with this system or what's in it or what it collects, etc. You could potentially add an extract of the available data within the assessor database.
Yeah, and I don't know how to word that. That's the best way to word it, but I think I know what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I do. I'm just. Again, but this section is giving the director we're talking about is the director of the Department of Taxes, right?
Yeah.
So it's giving the Department of Taxes access to the CAMA system. Okay. And that is important because the CAMA system, together with the landlord certificate, provides us the information that we need.
Yeah.
So they're just going to get the information on the database. The question is, how is it? I don't think this requires them. It doesn't require the director to do anything with it. It doesn't require the director to affirmatively do something. It just gives them this data. The question is, and then I think HCD and others, the HFA, put it all together and try to see, whatever they come up with. So I'm just thinking out loud, Joe,
Yeah.
if your concern is, I don't want the director to have to mandate that towns improve this database in some way, I think we're okay. Because it doesn't, it just gives them the database. It doesn't require, it doesn't give them power over the database. What do you think?
Well, so there,
It may need more clarification, but an extract from the database is distinct from access to the database.
Right.
You do not want. And the extract would be, say there's 30 fields for every record. We may be interested in just 8 of them.
Right,
That's the extract.
right.
The eight fields
Right.
that are useful to us.
But I don't think the director can say, and we'd like another field.
Yeah, that's, I think, what we need to avoid is turning their database into something giant that doesn't serve their purposes.
Yep. No, I mean, kind of what gets at it. I just, because it's the towns that shall transmit to the director. So the towns send the information to them. It's not that they just access it on their own.
We can put in there, the department may not require additional information other than that collected by county.
Before we add it, actually, let me send one more message out to see if I can
All right,
clarify without
we have a little
too
time.
much to do.
All right, go ahead.
well, so just really quickly, I mean, I was gonna pull up, I think, Parsons, I don't mean to speak for you, but to maybe articulate the concern here, the town has to provide the information. Otherwise, the commissioner can notify the Secretary of Transportation or the Secretary of Education, who shall withhold aid payments to the municipality. So I think the concern could be, or what I'm hearing the concern is, that commissioner or the director is like, there's additional information there that you should now be collecting to provide to us.
Yeah, that's why we could put in here.
I will say, this does say they have good cause, so in theory, the municipality could say, we don't collect it, et cetera. The question would be, would the commissioner or, whomever determine that to be good cause? I do think I can think about ways that we could try to add some wording in here to clarify that it's the data that the municipality is gathering within said system that is shared. And the director can't mandate additional fields.
So, Joe, you wanna just double check and then?
Yeah, I'll see if I can get an answer.
Okay, good,
But yes, thank you for that.
all right.
Back here. All right. We are going to move to the next section, which is the VHFA tax credits for the first generation home buyer and down payment assistance program. No changes to these sections. The land bank report, we haven't made any changes there. So now moving into the appeals section on page 20, there were changes here. I'm not going to walk through them with you because that would need Ellen for that.
But for only your section, do you want me to tell her now is the time?
I think if she can get here sometime, yeah.
I will just comment on her behalf. There was a change on the LURB study to move it to November 15th from November 1. So that's highlighted there.
Yeah. Let's hear, all right.
Okay.
I was asked by the LURB executive director, land use review board executive director, could we please have 2 more weeks? And I said, yeah.
Okay, so now the brownfield sections here, there were no changes there. The next change we're going to get to is the bottom of page 27 and the top of page 28. And this is related to taxes. So this was the section that added the short-term rental municipal taxing authority. So As you can see, the sub A, I haven't changed anything. This is the language that I quickly drafted up Friday afternoon. I went back, had a conversation, looked at a few other provisions, and what I would propose is adding this subsection B. If you recall, I mentioned that there are some municipalities that have pretty broad taxing authority and already tax short-term rentals. I didn't want to do anything that would somehow conflict or limit their taxing authority that already exists. So this section is in the local option tax, and I figured it was just appropriate to pull over, try to clarify the intent that your intent is not to, amend their power or authority into those charters or other law. So.
There was also an issue which came before the committee and we couldn't resolve, which was, is this really the best way to do it? In other words, you remember there were two ways to do this. One is to have the municipality impose the tax and collect it. And the other is to use it, sort of treat it like an additional local option tax, which is administered by the Department of Tax. And we were thinking about that, and it occurred, and I said to the committee, why don't we let Ways and Means deal with this? Because they understand this stuff better than we do. And I wrote over the weekend, last Friday, I wrote a long email to Ways and Means, setting out, describing each of the sections that had to do with taxes that were coming before them. They wrote back saying, great, we're there. And when I got to this section, I said just what I said to you, that we felt that which way to go on this was beyond our level of expertise, or that they really should opine on this. And that our intention was to give municipalities the power to tax in addition to whatever they were doing, and left it at that.
And this is to give the municipalities power. They have to vote on it. It's not us saying that we're imposing anything.
Right.
But I did have a constituent who
Yeah,
responded
also-
about this specific
Yeah,
issue.
no, we're not, we're sticking with the approach of towns can do what they want to do.
Okay.
Or nothing.
Mhm.
I did get a communication, both oral and written, from MMR representing the short-term rental association, saying, what's her name?
Julie Marks.
Julie Marks, saying she wanted to testify against it. That I said to him, and yeah, it was inappropriate, but I said to him, I think we're not going to have time to take additional testimony on this bill. And I think the place for her to testify is in front of Ways and Means. And I copied Ways, and I copied Ways and Means.
Oh,
And just as in case Rep. Lipsky had reached out to me, there's an issue in Stowe. Was that your constituent? And like I don't want to speak to it specifically because I'm not sure I understand the issue. But something that has come up and that he brought up to me today is that there are several units within Stowe who, for all intents and purposes, should be considered short-term rentals, but are not. And so any tax would not affect them, and he feels that this is regressive. So I didn't know if anyone had more thoughts on that.
That is not
Okay.
what I was referring to. So that's good to know.
Okay.
We'd have to get.
And I had suggested that he go to Ways and Means. I just didn't know if anybody had heard that.
So my concern, and I don't know if this is relevant or not, if the money goes to the local option tax, there are some municipalities that use it only for capital improvement. So how does it help in any other way toward any other funding rather than just capital improvements?
I would think that town made the decision to only use them for capital.
What?
I would think that town specifically set it to use it for that. Like if our town were to do it, we could say it goes in the general fund. We could say it goes a fund for this or that. Use it
Or
for
like or land trust, like it's in Burlington. That's up to the town.
Okay.
Either way. Should we, how close to the end are you? And I just want to have Ellen refresh.
The only things I have left are the appropriation section.
I've got a question as well. So go ahead. Oh, the appropriation section. I wondered if, where is it? It's VHFA study on manufactured housing, offsite construction. What page? 30.
Yes.
Okay, first of all, on 31, the line 2 of page 31, there's a typo. That was the first thing.
Oh, yeah, it's not off-site construction.
But the other question is, Chair Mahali, do you remember my telling you about my constituent who has an offsite construction company that's almost
Yeah.
completely automated?
Yeah.
How do I get that idea put into this since we're already, what, Springfield, yeah. How do I,
Collapsible, portable, they look better for emergency, the shelf on it, transported to move.
but you can put 3 of them on the back of a flatbed truck. So, but most importantly, the question is whether,
I think the way to do it is we ask Maura to do it. We don't have to put it
through the
in
bill,
here.
yeah, okay.
I think we just tell her. I mean, given what you said to me, I think we should just point it out and tell her, hey, you've got to look at this.
You have to include I mean, if the offsite construction does have one of its linchpins, workforce, then why wouldn't we look at an offsite construction company that doesn't have that as a linchpin?
No, it makes sense. No, I think we just tell it.
Okay.
I mean, this is supposed to study off, it's very broad. And you saw it, she was making it broader. When she went through all the things she had to study to justify the $250,000. I think we just tell her, this is one of the things you gotta look at. And I think we don't forget it. Okay.
Can I just go back to something really quickly? I did just touch base with the administration with Commissioner Farrell, and he's okay with that language and the VHIP.
Good, okay.
So I don't know if that helps.
Minimum of 30%.
Yeah, they're A-okay.
In moving down to that piece, I just kind of skipped over the landlord certificate. There's no changes to what you saw the Friday before you left. I'll just comment that I did go back and review the administration or the language that was provided. We haven't made any changes. I touched base with my counterpart Kirby, and they are proposing to collect different information than what was passed last year by the body. So I'm just making you aware of that. So. Okay. Moving into the appropriations section, which is page 31. Excuse me, I'm gonna go to 32. The bottom of 32, this updated the sum of monies that are going to Department of Housing and Community Development because we added 4 million for the rental housing improvement program and 2 million for the manufactured home improvement repair program. I updated the monies going to the NeighborWorks America affiliated home ownership centers to 500,000. I believe the last version we had was 300,000.
It's an error, yeah.
We've updated the home share reference. And lastly, 2 comments. In the next page, the Department of Labor, we've identified it as a 3-year grant to the Associated General Contractors of Vermont. And then finally, on page 35, subsection B, I've added the appropriation for the recovery residences. which, Mr. Chair, you're aware of my.
The concern here, and just by way of background, I'm just aware that this is a walkthrough and I don't want to make it go on too long. What's our next deadline for this if we actually adhere to it?
At 2:50 in 8 minutes, we were gonna have Representative Lamont introduce H
Okay.
440.
Great. This is somewhat different than what came out of Human Services, they had a different amount. I've
Right.
talked to, I pointed that out to Representative Bloomley. She understands it. She has, received various inputs about that. And I just told her, well, you'll see in our bill, we went with what was requested and left it at that. This is really a classic example where all of this is up to the folks. They have like 20 times more requests than they do money. So they're just gonna do what they're gonna do. And we're providing the language, and this is a concrete way of telling them what we want.
Right, I like that, right, that's what I was gonna say, I like that, is that this reflects our wishes, that's good.
Okay,
The effective date section, I just made the change to ensure that the Universal Design Study Committee goes into effect on passage, and the repeal of the landlord certificate changes that were made in Act 181 takes effect upon passage. So that way your new language goes into effect July 1, which is when the current change is expected to go into effect. So we're going to repeal the current on passage. So that way your language will then go to effect on July 1. One highlight that I will mention from what the administration proposed on the landlord certificate, they wanted the, apologies for the scrolling all the way back up. This requires, there's a requirement that annually the
What page you
information,
want?
this is page 30.
hold on.
So annually, the department has to submit a report of the aggregate information to you all. Part of the administration requested that that not occur until 2026. That was a significant change from what was proposed in the last check, the bill that you all passed. I see no reason why you would want to extend that out a year. You may want to talk with the department about why they wanted that.
This is the off-site construction?
Nope.
No.
This is in the landlord certificate. So this is just the end of the section, right? So we're under landlord certificate, section 17. But when you go to the bottom of that section, the change that we're making here is annually, the department has to submit a report of all the aggregate data in the landlord certificate to the General Assembly, to those committees. Now, the change that was in 181 last year requires them to give that report to you this December of 2025. The administration's proposal to repeal that language and reinsert new language, they requested that that report not be required until December of 26. I didn't make that change because this is already going to go into effect in July 1. So it didn't make sense to me why you would extend that out a year. Commenting to you that I didn't make that change that was requested, and so you may want to hear from the department about why they would want it to go out to 2026 and not give you the report this year as is what you passed last year. Does that make sense? Okay.
If also we've changed the dates due, then why is it all new language? Where is the language that it required that?
So
I see the crossed out
what I
before
can
that.
do is I can go get this as you passed the change last year. So this is what's going to go into effect in July 1. You're repealing it. And we're reinserting the new section because we're creating new language. And so they don't have an issue with this change. They want it to go into effect, the department, I guess, presumably based on the language that they provided. So because we're repealing what happened in 181, we need to reinsert it.
Cameron, I would suggest that you talk to the department and ask them whether they care. Okay, I mean, if they have a good reason that it should be, like, they're not gonna have enough data or something.
I just read that.
You did?
No.
Okay, well, we'll find out. All
Sure.
right.
Yes, again, I just wanted you to be aware, and now I'm going to yield the chair to my compatriot, assuming that that's what you would like me to do.
Yeah, you have to stay in the room.
Okay. I'm leaving my laptop for ease of use, if that works for you.
Wow.
So Ellen's been working on the appeal section, and there's only, I think, one, am I right, Ellen? One of the three that's any different than the one you saw before.
Yes. Ellen Tchaikovsky, Office of Legislative Counsel. Here on draft 7.2, my language is on page 20. It's up on the screen currently. So when last we spoke, we were discussing this language about de novo hearings at the environmental division. And so you all were discussing, the change here is actually very small. This is great. Okay, well, it's almost exactly what was there before. I must have new eyes. So the prior version, it was in subdivision H, but it was number 3. And so now the language has just been moved up to be part of the main paragraph. And I'll read through it, but the distinction is whether or not this is actually a type of de novo hearing or if it's an exception to the de novo hearing rule. I had it originally drafted as an exception, but it seems to be just a small nuanced difference of the de novo hearing rule. So here is how it now reads. Page 20, line 5, de novo hearing. The Environmental Division, applying the substantive standards that were applicable before the tribunal appealed from, shall hold a de novo hearing on those issues that have been appealed, period. For a municipal land use permit application for a housing development, if the appeal is of a denial, the application is consistent with the municipal bylaw or land use regulation that directly affects the property, or if the appeal is of an approval, the application is inconsistent with the municipal bylaw or land use regulation that directly affects the property. It shall not be de novo in the case of those other 2 types of cases that are already considered exceptions to de novo rule. So that is, I believe that is nearly identical to the language that you looked at previously. You had asked me to move it to somewhere that made sense in this paragraph, and I did not move it very far after talking with the chair.
Also, she was attempting to make it clear that what if a developer was the appellant
Right.
versus what if,
Yeah, that
and
was-
so she's really made it clear.
It's very clear.
Excellent job.
Where's,
Page 20.
no, yeah, I see that. Trying to get to our interested persons part of.
Yeah, the interested person thing we changed, and that we changed the definition of interested person.
Agreed.
Agreed, agreed, and
Particularized,
that wasn't, she hasn't changed that from the draft we saw on Friday.
Okay, I was just looking for it.
Ellen, where is that?
On page 22, I believe is what you're going to, as an interested person in particularized interest.
So, you use particular injury rather than particularized injury? Is that-
Oh, yeah, that's the whole. So, sorry, I'm sorry, I was sorry, that's and so the particular injury attributable to the decision is the language that's used in the court decision that Judge Zone referenced, not the phrase particularized interest. Particularized interest is the standard under Act 250. So, this is the language that was recommended by Judge Zone.
Okay.
I think it will be a fairly close analysis to what happens under Act 250 because I think in that one, it's actually an injury particularized to a person, and this is a particular interest attributable.
I had questions about that too. Not for the, I was saying to Rough Dodge that I was,
Thoughts? Do we prefer particularized? Do you, Ellen, do you have any comment on that?
I don't know if I want to rock anything now, but. Right?
Grammatically, that paragraph under the Act 250 language it's a different sentence. So I mean,
I like. The other one, but for the record, but I don't know if to go there right now, but it's up to you.
so I actually think there's a little bit of a typo in the language on 20. Now that I've read it aloud, I think it needs a little bit of a sort of conjunction on line 8.
Do you need for a material land use permit application for housing development,
The court
The
shall,
court.
yes,
the court shall,
yes,
review
review if,
for,
Yeah.
whether,
or, yeah. Yes.
okay. Okay, yeah, I thought about that, too, yeah. To make it,
That's why we
to make it a verb,
Yes, that's what.
make it a.
Read it out.
A sentence, yeah, okay. And Ellen, that's the only other change you made, right?
Yes.
Okay, what I would like to do, given our schedule, we've had our walkthrough now for this bill, we will have more time to talk about it. We can't vote on the bill until we've had one more walkthrough. We're not allowed to do that. And we might have suggestions or something like that. So there's gonna be another draft, probably 7.2 or whatever.
This is 7.3.
8.1.
7.3, 8.1, final draft, okay? All right. And Cameron, I will email you some language that I sort of got upstairs and so, and also Teresa, and we'll go back and forth till we have anything, okay? All right, and you'll make that change and we're set.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you.
Now am I released?
You can take your laptop. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. Let's now. You're released.
Okay, we'll work on draft 8.1. When you send me, if you send me that stuff from upstairs, we should have, I'll try to get it to the editors. Is there a day that are you looking for? Tomorrow morning?
Do we have a date do we have a time for the drive-through environment yet?
Yes, it's at 10:30 tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
So be ready for 10:30 tomorrow.
Yeah, well. For the drive.
Yeah.
No, it's Ellen. Yeah, she should be there and
They're also having testimony, just so you know.
on that. Do you know who the testimony is from?
Jamie Fidel from the VNRC,
Okay.
Judge Selman, and potentially others, but I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, so that's gonna take the morning.
Yeah.
And, so I think that that's Wednesday. It'll be the morning and then the House floor comes. I think we should shoot for a draft by Wednesday afternoon because we could reconvene after the floor.
Yeah. Good. Yes, sir.
Right. So we are now at,
I guess hope so, yeah.
go ahead and sit down there, Claudia. Claudia. Did we,
I already went.
you went, okay. Page four, well, first of all, wait just a minute. How does the committee feel? Shall we continue or take a 5-minute break? What is
I'd
it?
love to continue.
A break? Oh,
The 5 minutes.
would you want a break?
Let's take a break.
Oh.
That's my vote.
That's great.
I want to be like, ladies are called.
Yes.
Gentlemen, could we
I'll try not to put you to sleep.
very brief
Very
break?